Turn on the news and you'll hear one story. Social Security is running out of money. Cuts are coming. And that's the crisis. But here's the truth. Social Security cuts aren't the real retirement crisis. They're just the headline. The real storm is much bigger, and it could hit every generation, from boomers to Gen Z. Yes, if Congress does nothing, the trust fund will run short around 2033. And yes, that means about a 20% cut to benefits. That's serious. But even if politicians patch that hole, raise taxes, trim benefits, kick the can, the deeper cracks in our retirement system remain. Because the real problem is coverage. As of 2023, about 70% of U.S. workers had access to a retirement plan, but only 53% actually participated. And when they do, the money often doesn't last. In 2019 alone, over $60 billion vanished early from 401k. Instead of compounding for decades, it was pulled for emergencies, medical bills, or job changes. And then there's the savings gap. If you look only at retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs, the median baby boomer has saved zero. Half of households have nothing. Even counting pensions and other assets, the overall median is just 200k, far below what most need. So most people heading into retirement are underprepared. A tiny slice, maybe 5%, has what they need. Everyone else is at risk of working longer, relying on family, falling into poverty, or depending entirely on Social Security, which is itself a fragile system. And here's why. Social Security is pay-as-you-go. All payroll taxes flow into one big national pool, the trust fund. From that pool, benefits are paid out to retirees, disabled workers, and survivors. There's no personal account with your name on it. It's a collective system. In the 1960s, that pool was supported by about 5 workers per retiree. Today, it's closer to 3. By the 2030s, it'll be just 2. The math is pyramid-shaped, a wide base of workers supporting the top. But as birth rates fall and lifespans rise, that base keeps shrinking, and the structure becomes fragile. Not every country runs retirement this way. Hong Kong, Singapore, and Australia all use fully funded systems. Workers and employers put money into individual accounts, invested in markets, and that money grows for their own retirement. It's not used to pay today's retirees. That avoids the pyramid math, though it creates a different risk because everything depends on markets staying stable. And it's not just Asia. Look at Canada. The Canada pension plan may look like Social Security on the surface. Both are mandatory, both pay retirement and survivor benefits. But here's the difference. CPP contributions are professionally invested worldwide by the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. Stocks, bonds, real estate, infrastructure, a global portfolio worth over $700. Social Security, by contrast, puts all of its reserves only into U.S. Treasuries, basically government IOUs. That's why Canada's system is more sustainable. In Mercer's Global Pension Index, Canada scores a B, while the U.S. is stuck at C's. Even America's closest neighbor has built a stronger, more resilient retirement system. Now, imagine if the U.S. tried to copy Canada's model. The Social Security Trust Fund today is about $2.8 trillion, roughly 10% of the entire Treasury market. If that money were shifted into global stocks and real estate, Social Security might earn higher returns. But it would also shake the bond market and expose retirees to stock crashes. That's why the U.S. keeps Social Security tied to Treasuries, safer politically, but weaker financially. Now you might be thinking, doesn't the U.S. already have something similar like 401k? And yes, they look like Singapore's or Australia's systems on the surface. Individual accounts, invested in markets. But here's the difference. 401ks are voluntary, patchy, and leaky. Only about half of workers participate, and billions leak out early every year. In Singapore or Australia, contributions are mandatory, universal, and locked until retirement. That's why their systems can act as a backbone. While in the US, 401ks are just a supplement to Social Security. On paper, you could argue the US is better. It has 2 layers, Social Security and 401ks. But in practice, that's exactly where the system fails. Other countries built one strong retirement pillar. The US built 2 weak ones. And in math, we introduce 1 + 1 = 0.5. What's worse is, even the biggest funded pensions aren't bulletproof. In 2022, UK pension funds faced massive margin calls after interest rates spiked. They were forced to dump government bonds in a fire sale, threatening to destabilize the entire financial system. The Bank of England had to step in with a 65 BB rescue. That was just a preview of how fragile the retirement machine can be when markets seize up. And here's the toughest part for younger generations. The system only works if they keep funding it, but Gen Z already knows they'll pay more in and get less out. For them, Social Security looks less like an investment and more like a tax. Surveys show many under 35 don't even believe it will exist by the time they retire. If that trust breaks, or if younger workers simply refuse to keep paying for a deal they know is worse, the crisis accelerates. So when the media says the retirement crisis is about Social Security cuts, they're missing the point. The real crisis is structural. It's about a system designed for a world of big families, short retirements, and stable markets, colliding with today's reality of low birth rates, longer lifespans, and financial fragility. What happens if governments can't raise enough taxes? What if markets seize up just as millions of retirees need to cash out? What if younger generations simply refuse to keep paying more in for less out? That's the retirement crisis, and it's already here. If you found this useful, comment, like, and share. And subscribe to Global Notes by JP for weekly macro videos with the second-level thinking that the headlines miss.